So quick question, everybody. How many of you have ever had a car that looked a little bit like this? Anybody recognize that? Now here's the question. How many of you in the last 3 to 5 years have bought or leased a new vehicle? I see your hands? It's not a trick question. Okay. Here's the other question then. How many of you, when you got that new vehicle, put those tires on your new vehicle? Nobody? I'm over one. Well, let's do this. Well, how many of you have ever had a pair of shoes that look a little bit like that? Just a little bit dirty, a little bit worn out. So here's the question. How many of you, when you got a new dress, or you got a new suit, or you got a new outfit for work, put those shoes on with that new suit? You don't do it, right? And yet humankind has struggled with that kind of thinking, especially in the faith element, for centuries. When Jesus was walking through the community and he was teaching people about who he is and what should be done and what they might want to consider giving up and when are the right times to do certain things, some of the religious leaders started getting a little bit huffy with him. They started to try and corner him. They started to try and catch him in some things, to try and trip him up. And Jesus, quite frankly, got a little bit fed up with them. He was trying to show them something fresh, something new, something exciting, something eternal, and they were still tied to dirty shoes and old tires. And so Jesus interrupts his train of thought, interrupts his teaching, and Jesus looks at the people that day and he says these words: "No one sews a patch of unshrunk cloth on an old garment, for the patch will pull away from the garment, making the tear worse. And neither do people pour new wine into old wineskins. If they do, the skins will burst. The wine will run out and the wineskins will be ruined. No, they pour new wine into new wineskins, then both are preserved." Now Jesus was using language that, as we discussed last week with the shepherds and the sheepfolds and stuff, that crowd, that congregation, if you will, readily understood. Because water over there, even to this day, was so terrible, every water has a certain sense of alcohol content to purify it, to clean out the bacteria so that people don't get sick. So wineskins, where this was taking place, were readily observable at pretty much every street, every home, every community. It wasn't just a corner pub. In fact, it looked a lot like this. That was a wineskin. Basically, it was an old animal skin, and they took it and they hung it. And then what they did is they poured the liquid, the grape juice, if you will, inside of there. And then as it began to ferment, what happened was gases began to cause both the liquid and the air to expand. Now, if it was a new animal skin with which they made that, what happened was it would expand, and as it was expanding, the skin would stretch with it. But if someone had had a bad day, maybe they didn't have enough money, or they ran out of animals, they would get an old wineskin and put it in there, and as the gases and the fermentation in the process began to expand, it would burst, and they would lose the wineskin, and they would lose all the wine, and as a part of that, they would lose a bit of their own personal economy because they spent money on that, or maybe they intended to sell that, and they lost it all. Jesus said, if that's not enough, you don't go and put a patch on a garment, because here's what happens. If you go to the next slide. In Luke's, all three of the synoptic gospels, Matthew, Mark, and Luke, which basically tell the same stories. John does his own thing for the most part. Luke says it like this: you don't put a patch on a garment because the new patch won't match the old garment. And then he goes on to add what we just read here in Matthew, what Mark also says. And if you've got a garment that is shrunk, or the patch that has it, and it begins to tear. So if you put a patch there and you go out and wear it, as it would begin to shrink, it would create a bigger hole. And not only does it not match what you're trying to do, it creates this tear in what it is that you're trying to achieve. Patching can only work up to a point. Would you agree with that? Patching can only work up to a point. And there comes a time when we have to scratch something entirely and begin fresh. Now, I don't know if you know this or not, But in the last 7 days, since we were in this gymnasium last Sunday morning, are you aware that 200 churches closed in the United States? And do you know that by the time we're in here next Sunday morning, another 200 churches will close across the United States? We didn't want to be one of those churches. Some of you have been around this gathering of people for several years. We started creating a type of a new thing. We were meeting over at Greenfield in Maine. And the elders and I began to talk about the future of our church. Over there, 90% of those neighborhoods were empty, a little over 6 months out of the year. What were we going to do? Should we consider relocating? What's going to happen? And I remember one of the elders, and I don't remember which one of the, actually I do remember who said this, I think of it, because she rarely spoke. But the chairman of our elder board, Leona, said basically, we've got to move or just slowly die. And we started in August of 2017 having those conversations where in essence we shut down what was. We relocated. In relocating, we've met and tried to figure out 6 different locations in the last 14 months. We were shutting down and relocated. Also gave us an opportunity to reimagine. In essence, it gave us an opportunity to start over. But starting over isn't just about changing locations. It's not just about a different building with fresh paint and a bigger parking lot. Starting over actually has to begin in the hearts and minds of every single one of us who call this church our home. And there, if you've got your message notes in front of you, a couple of things that all of us have to respond to personally. This maybe you share it with your connection group. That's a safe place. But this isn't for public consumption. This is you and God in this moment. You have to answer the question, which one best describes you? At Connect Church, I desire personal preferences. Now, personal preferences are just that. They're not particularly biblical or unbiblical. They're just an adaptation of some values along to what we think personally. And far too many people, not at Connect Church, but the other 299,999 churches in the United States. They say as long as the bills are paid, and I get to hang out with my friends for an hour to an hour and a half, and I feel pretty good, I'm okay with that. As long as I get to hear music I like, as long as the Bible translation that I prefer is read, as long as people dress according to how I think people should dress in church, I'm okay with that. That's one of the questions you have to answer about yourself. Here's another one at Connect Church. I desire biblical principles. See, you have to make the choice because in most of the Bible, they are mutually exclusive. Do you come and prefer personal preferences or do you come and desire biblical principles? Biblical principles are all about that almost seemingly careless, radical approach of Jesus to others. It's about selflessness over selfishness. Here's another one we have to answer at Connect Church. Do I have a fondness for the past? Now, I'm not as idiotic as most of you might think I am. I get that nostalgia is a good thing. I get that tradition is important. You couldn't have a single college campus with a football Saturday if you didn't have tradition, right? However, here's my issue. In the United States, too many churches no longer worship God, they worship the past. They fall at the feet of tradition, not at the foot of the cross. In fact, this is true pretty much throughout all of human history. Anytime progress was attempted to be made, it has had to overcome prejudices of a shut mind. When they introduced the automobile, they had to overcome that. When they introduced the train, they had to overcome that. When they introduced the airplane, they had to overcome that. When they introduced the telephone, they had to overcome that. Just recently, a few years ago, when they introduced the camera phone, they had to overcome that. Because Kodak had that technology for nearly 40 years and said it would never amount to anything, and Kodak's bankrupt. When they introduced an antiseptic that would cure infections, they had to overcome that. When scientists said that the earth revolves around the sun, we had to overcome that. When any living thing stops growing, folks, it starts dying. Now, just like you have to decide, do you desire personal preferences or biblical principles, you have to decide, do you desire a fondness for the past or do you have a passion for the future? If you have a passion for the future, we always get up every morning and say, what's God going to do now? And I know that some of you in this room are what are considered seniors in our culture, but I know that you are also very Facebook, very social media savvy. I watched my mom and dad. My dad's 80, my mom's 76, sit on my back patio for nearly 6 weeks over January and February, and I had to get their attention to get them off their own personal social medias. So we've got to find a way to optimize technology because even your senior citizen friends are utilizing it. That's why I think one of the things we have to start between Easter and the fall is an online campus. And it's not a back door into the church, it's the front door anymore. You've got to start that. You've got to find ways to optimize it. But when you think about a fondness versus past, or a desire, or a passion for the future, I also understand that history is important. And we're going to cycle back to this in a few moments, but here's what I want you to know that I get, and I hope you can get. As followers of Jesus, for some of us who have been a part of this fellowship in its different iterations for maybe decades, we have to find a way to embrace our history and at the same time impact modern culture. See, folks, the reason I call this message Urgent Church is this. It's the top of the second inning. We're moving from everything that's been temporary to what's going to become permanent. It's the top of the second inning, and we're losing 87-13. See, my greatest fear, the thing that keeps me awake praying at 2 o'clock in the morning, is that in about 2 weeks, when we walk through those doors for that first worship service, or in 3 weeks, when we walk through those doors for that Easter service, so many of us are going to sit down and go, oh, we made it, we've arrived. Are you kidding me? Culture's still winning 87-13. 87%, 9 out of 10 households that live on the block you live on would spend eternity separated from Christ if he came right now. We're losing. Urgent Church embraces the fact that culture is winning the war for the souls of humankind. We ask the question, what are we going to do to change it? Now, Jesus talked about, in terms that they would understand, and it's almost become cliche in modern church culture, about old wineskin and new wineskin. But I want to share with you, and I don't have time to go into great deal detail on a lot of this, as I was reminded before service, we got to be out here by 11. So in the next 24 minutes, I'm going to walk through what old wineskins in our own fellowship and understanding look like, and what the new wineskin can become when we get up tomorrow morning. Old wineskin is this. Christians have a consumer mentality. Christians have a way of saying, what's in it for me? What can I get from God? What can the church do for me? The fact of the matter is, that kind of mentality is dying. That's why people continue to church shop and church hop. The new wineskin is, you're not a consumer, you're a contributor. It's about selfless discipleship. It's about absolute surrender. It's saying, because Christ died for me, how do I die to myself so I can do for others? And Sundays are more about what we give than what we get. It's more about Jesus than it is about personal preference. Another old wineskin is, are you a member or are you a minister? The old wineskin is that of being a member. Well, here's what I know about members. Members are entitled. Members attend church. Members reap benefits. Pastors and teachers and staff and elders do all the work and serve the members. But where members are entitled, ministers are empowered. People who are ministers serve and they care and they provide. I got a text message afternoon. But after I read the text, here was my initial thought. I wonder how many other people in Connect Church got that same text. And when I show up at that floor today, and I tell the charge nurse, my name's David, I'm a minister at Connect Church, I'm looking for Zach Allison, she would say, you can't go in there. How many ministers does that church have? There's already been 50 people here to see him. Because when you are a minister, not a member, you do the work of the church. Pastors, teachers, staff, and elder equip the people to be difference makers. Members talk about church, ministers talk about impact. Another old wineskin is the focus of the church, inward or outward. The old wineskin says that we're inward, that it's all about us, it's about our wants, it's about our desires, it's about our ideas. Game over. The new wineskin said, hey, we're outwardly focused, and we're a safe place for people to come in and share their doubts and their hurts and their struggles. When we're outwardly focused, we're more intentional about being and doing more for hell-bound people. You guys have heard the phrase, maybe you know what it means, maybe you're not completely convinced what it means, but there's a demographic in American culture known as millennials. You got a big idea what I'm talking about? Look around this room. I see about 3 of them. No, I mean that's not a good thing. But here's what I know about millennials. Millennials especially need to feel free to express their objections. You know what I know? The Holy Spirit's not afraid of their questions. Now, just so we're fair, that works in both conservative churches and liberal churches. Because when a millennial goes into a conservative church and asks a certain set of questions, what happens is they get very trite, very pat answers. When they walk into a liberal church, they may get their question reasonably answered, but they're getting no direction, so their lives and the struggles within them are still unresolved. We have to choose to be an outwardly focused church. As we prepare to move into that facility, and I don't know if it's going to be 2 weeks or 3 weeks, moving target work. Remember last week? Don't get Old wineskin says we're going to be wishful. Now I started to put hopeful. Then I remembered I did that message called Hope is Real, and we talked about false hope. False hope is basically wishful thinking. So for most of us, this isn't hope, this is wishes. As we prepare to move into a new building, we think, well, maybe they'll come, maybe they'll change. I'll pray for them. That's wishful thinking. Prayer is important, don't hear me say it's not. Prayer is the bedrock. We'll get to that in a second. The old wineskin is wishful. New wineskin is intentional. New wineskin says, I'm going to put legs on my prayers. I know I'm old-fashioned, deal with it. I'm going to put legs on my prayers, and I'm going to plan for them to come. I'm going to help them come. I'm going to plan for them to change. I'm going to help them change. See, folks, we have to be intentional about creating an environment for them to change and to grow. And we do this also in very, very practical ways. We can be wishful about some things, and we can be intentional about some things. Take, for instance, the issue of mass shootings that goes on in the United States. It happens just not in post offices and McDonald's anymore. It's in schools and churches, right? Now, we had a couple of choices. We could wish that never happened to us and cross our fingers and pray about it. Or we could put legs on our prayers and develop a highly qualified, high-capacity security team to ensure that it doesn't happen. Most of you don't even know who they are here this morning. But they're protecting your lives and theirs in case someone would want to do ill to you or to our children in another room. Let me give you another example. We can hope to make a difference in children's ministry, or we can be intentional on making a difference in children's ministry. Some of that is very basic stuff. Like we can expect guests to come in and guess who the children's workers are, or we can somewhat uniformly attire our children's people so that they look like they're there to minister to children, and that people naturally gravitate to them. We get over there in a couple of weeks, you'll notice that. What's some other? Here's an old wineskin. This is going to sting a little. An old wineskin says, I grew up in the church, so most of my friends or all of my friends are Christians. The new wineskin says, my new friends are all non-Christians. How many Christians can you lead to Christ tomorrow? None, right? None. So if we're going to be outwardly focused, what are we going to have to do? We're going to have to choose to build relationships with people who don't know Jesus. See, one of the way you do that is you start talking within the church about things that happen outside of the walls of the church, not just things that happen inside the walls of the church. See, too many Christians know only other Christians. And you know who the happiest person on the planet is about that? Satan. Because there's nothing Satan likes better than a fat, happy, satisfied Christian. And so most of us live in a Christian bubble. Well, just like Jesus told the Pharisees, the new wine's going to burst your wineskin. New wine's going to burst our bubble this morning. New friends. New wine is expansive, right? It grows and the gases and its environment has to grow with it. Well, so too is new ministry expansive. How many of you, by a show of hands, I'd like 100% participation, have already created your list of 5 people you are fasting and praying for that will say yes to your invitation to join you on Easter? Look around. Look around. About 3 of us. In your worship folder, do you see this thing here? Pull that out. Everybody hold it up and make sure we're talking about the same thing. You've got 2 phenomenal opportunities. We put together 3 community picnics. Each one of them had the same 2 purposes. Number 1, we were coming off a tough time, off a tough season. So what we wanted to do was we wanted to give an experience where we could have some internal community, where we could reestablish some morale. And I think we've done some of that with the picnics for those who've been there. Would you agree? Reason number 2, which was actually first and foremost, was it was a safe environment to invite our non-Christian friends to. Oops. And then on the other side, you see the Easter thing? 8 out of 10 people you know will come to church with you on Easter if you only ask them. 8 out of 10 people you know, according to Barna, Gallup, a whole bunch of people way smarter than I, will come to church with you on Easter if you only ask them. We don't print these just so we have something to put in here so it looks like the Sears catalog and we're a busy church. That doesn't make us a successful church. We print these for you to use. Next week, we will have available to you invite cards showing our new location, announcing our Easter service, giving some basic information about that. We'll have however many dozens you want to give. We'll have several thousand of these available starting next week for you to use for those 5 people that you're going to invite for Easter services, that you're going to invite to the picnic. If we aren't intentional about reaching others, then why pray about them showing up? Old wineskin, new wineskin. An old wineskin says, this is a worship center. You know, even like USA Today or Time Magazine or whatever paper or periodical you used to read when it was still in print, when they would refer to something going on in a church, in their language, what would they always call it? They'd call it a house of worship, right? Even culture called it that. Well, the old wineskin was a worship center. Now, don't misunderstand me. We're still going to continue to worship. You're going to hear the music you heard this morning, and it's going to continue to improve. We're still going to engage. But we're not focusing on that place being a worship center. We're focusing on being a training center. See, worship center, here's what's the problem with that. Cool church isn't so cool anymore. There's at least one phenomenal cool church in every community in America. Cool church isn't what it used to be, and traditional church is even further removed. But when we begin to focus on the church as a training center, that means we're opening the doors. Every time we open the doors, we're doing so for the purpose of developing disciples. And everything about our new facility is meant to engage. Some of it's cool, some of it's not so cool. In training centers, whether it's a gym, whether it's a fitness place, or whether you're going to a counselor, or you're talking to a consultant, or you're being trained for a new job, what's the one thing that's consistent in every one of those? The trainer always tells you the truth. You want your doctor lying to you? You might want your fitness coach to lie to you every once in a while. If you own your own business, you don't want your business consultant lying to you, right? You don't want your nutritionist lying to you. The same kind of way, we're going to train up and raise up disciples. It's not just about coming to church and singing Kumbaya or whatever it was we sang this morning. It's about opening our lives for God to develop us through His Word and through qualified functions of ministry and the kinds of men and women, the disciples He wants us to be. Which directly leads me to the next thought. The old wineskin is that we are coming to church. The new wineskin is we are called to be the church, that we are being the church. Coming to church, old wineskin. We come to church on Sunday, we do our God thing, we give a little money, we go home, maybe pastor, elders, you help us. New wineskin is being the church. There's a real sense of mission. It happens Monday through Saturday, and then we come in here on Sunday and we celebrate together all that God did in us, with us, and through us, Monday through Saturday. We celebrate this, and He is the guest of honor. In American culture, churches are just narcissistic. You know any narcissists? Everything in a narcissist's life, including you, is about them. You ask a narcissist any question you want, and within about 6 seconds, she or he can make it about them. Well, the American church is a little bit like that. But here's the good news. If we're being the church, if we're about others, we will never become self-obsessed. We gather, like we are this morning, or anytime we come to some activity to church, so that we can grow, so that we can then grow to the place where we can go out and better serve. So if you take gather, grow, and serve, and in between you wrote parenthetically the little word to, in between each of those words, we gather to grow, to serve. That's what God's calling us to. Coming to church doesn't cut it. Here's another one. Old wineskin. I'll believe it when I see it. That's the attitude some people have taken about our new facility, by the way. I'm not going to give any money in. I'll go over there every once in a while and pretend like I'm praying, but I'll believe it when I see it. Walt Disney said, I'll see it when I believe it. In other words, I already see what the future looks like. I believe it. That means that I can help develop it, that I can be open to it. I believe it when I see it as a wait-and-see attitude, and you never have to own anything because you never see anything. I'll see it when I believe it means you believe and you're open your eyes to now and the future. Another old wineskin and new wineskin, static versus fluid. The old wineskin is static. Here's what I mean by that. We start something, and then that something stays in place until Jesus comes. The greatest threat to the future success of this church, or any church, is the current success of this church or any church. Because it becomes in church talk. What's the church cliche we call when somebody talk to me? Sacred cows, right? There's going to be a lot of barbecue coming up. Because sacred cows are all about static ministry. It's all about the status quo, and it's the death of the church. Here's why. A static ministry only focuses on what and how. That's it. What are we going to do? How are we going to do it? Important. But that's all it focuses on. A fluid church focuses on why. It always asks the question, why are we doing this? To reach or to achieve or to develop. Well, if it's not achieving that, we need to tweak it or cut it, right? If we're going to be honest. And here's the deal. Static church, it focuses on what and how, is because it becomes territorial. But why is actually very uniting because it keeps a church on its mission. Does that make sense? It keeps a church on its mission. Let me share a business term with you coined by Andy Walensky. The business term that he coined was called global dexterity. Global dexterity, quite frankly, in my estimation, Andy didn't think about this, I was complimenting him with this. Global dexterity is basically business speak for new wineskins. Because here's what Andy says. He says, global dexterity is the ability to adapt behaviors across cultures without losing who you are in the process. Isn't that cool? It's the ability to adapt behaviors across cultures without losing who you are in the process. Another old wineskin is imitation. The old wineskin of imitation says churches borrow from other churches, the very obvious things, the silver bullets, kids look this way, worship's done this way, lights look like this, all of that. And imitation always asks this question, what works? Not a bad question, right? Pretty good question. But the new wineskin is experimentation. Experimentation says, yes, we have to understand what works, but we have to better qualify by understanding what works for us. That's why we spent the last month talking to you about your shape. That's why we spent the last month informing you about the needs and ministry of the 85205. We want to experiment with, through you, who God has designed you to be. Because if God has equipped us and designed us with a certain level of spiritual giftedness or certain shapes, here in the 85205, it's quite possible that God wants us to unleash those shapes and spiritual giftedness here in the 85205. Not what they're doing in Scottsdale or Peoria or Glendale or what they're doing in California or Montana or Ohio or Florida, just here. We want to experiment with that. We may do something for 4 to 6 weeks and stop and say, hey, it was a great idea. We thought it had some merit. It didn't happen. We may say we're going to do something for 4 to 6 weeks and God's all over. We're not going to do this for another 4 to 6 weeks. We can't be afraid of success. Just like we can't be afraid of failure. Experimentation, ladies and gentlemen, is the key to innovation. All those things you look at in your business model, or in your parenting model, or in a church model, that we are doing that were considered innovative ideas were first experiments by somebody who was willing to take a chance and pay the price. Here's a real important one for us. This one's got our names all over it. The old wineskin, the way of doing church, is we're going to do it generationally. Here's what I mean by that. Most churches have what you would call generational approach, the old wineskin. They have children's ministry, they have student ministry, they have adult ministry, they have senior adult ministry, they have marriage ministry, they have singles ministry. Does that sound familiar to anybody? In and of itself, nothing wrong with that. The only problem is that's an old wineskin. Here's why I say that. Intergenerational ministries are the things that are actually making differences in the lives of people today. Are you aware that 40 to 50% of church kids, not just kids, church kids, kids who are active in their final year of high school in a local church youth group, when they move out of high school, from that 18 to 24-year-old range, approximately 50% of them walk away from their faith. Is that sobering? 50% of it. That means if you have 2 grandchildren, one of them will continue in their faith and one of them will walk away. That's like saying, well, I'm going to love this one and not that one. You've got 2 children, same math. What makes the difference in the 50% that's not walking away? The answer is going to surprise you. I wasn't prepared for it. You prepared for it? Y'all are really quiet today. Kara Powell did a study. She was a mom, soccer mom, who was active in her church, got concerned. She went on and did some initial education, and in her education she ended up writing a dissertation that became a book. It's called Sticky Faith. And she says the key factors that cause the other 50% to stick intergenerational ministry. Now by that, I don't mean we don't have children's ministry, we don't have student ministry. Okay, don't hear me say that. I'm saying it's not enough. It's both and. She said it's not about having youth here and children's there, but it's about, because when that happens, students graduate, and when they go off to college or they go off to their career, wherever it is they go, they know youth group, but they don't know ministry. They know youth gatherings, they don't know church. They know youth events, they don't know Jesus. They are relationally, and spiritually impoverished. She said, but when you begin to blend the groups, when you intentionally take the senior adult ministry, or the student ministry, or the adult ministry, the children's ministry, or the singles ministry, the marriage ministry, when you take all that stuff, and you blend them strategically, intentionally, not wishfully. Still with me? Will you do that through classes, or best yet, service opportunities? All of a sudden, that 15-year-old just doesn't become the volunteer helper who helps clear the gutters of a widow. It becomes somebody that you're attaching a piece of your life to because you're serving hand in hand, side by side. That when you share certain classes together, that understanding is opening up. And 75-year-old ears get to hear things through 15-year-old understanding, and it begins to bridge the gap so that we don't do trite, pat answers, but that we have healthy discussion and we do things together, that we develop fresh understanding as part of our fresh DNA. Adults stay fresh and relevant and engaged when they're in their understanding, when they're sharing ministry with students, not leading ministry with students, as important as that is, but sharing it. So maybe some of our Connect University classes this summer will be designed for us to come together intergenerationally. Maybe our outreach opportunities will do the same. Real quickly, because I'm out of time. Old wineskin is fellowship. New wineskin is community. See, fellowship is literally all about internal Christians, right? Honestly, get together, eat some pie, have some coffee. Great fellowshipping with you, right? We'll gather outside around the youth table, or we can buy a ticket to the breakfast and we'll talk for a few minutes and catch up with the grandkids. Nice fellowshipping with you, right? It's a church term, right? But community is both internal and external. Community is about doing life together through the church and with people and through the ups and downs. Our connection group should be optimizing this. See, here's why that's so important. Love is the defining character. And no one should ever outlove or out-community the local church. If we love the way Jesus loves, people will line up to get in our doors. If we fellowship the way Christians fellowship, the crown is about to lose the gates. The last one is most important. The old wineskin is becoming a Christian. The fact of the matter is, in the 21st century, globally, not just the United States, but globally, Christianity is just another world religion with a whole bunch of do's and don'ts, and let's hang out together. Being a Christ follower is about being sold out. It's about being absolutely yielded in every way, for everything, for everyone. Christianity is all about a world religion that develops institutional Christians. Becoming a Christ follower produces followers of Jesus. Now here's some of the good news. That's coming from the teaching of Jesus. If you go back into the Old Testament, where we hung out a little bit before we started this relocation process, in the book of Joshua, chapter 1, you see these words. Joshua's talking to these people. They've been out of Israel. Most of you know the backstory, 40 years of wandering, all that stuff. And he says to them, we're about to go into this land. I want you to be strong and courageous. And in this line here, in your notes, this is really, really key to us. Underline the phrase where it says, because you will lead these people to inherit the land I swore to their ancestors to give them. Legitimate question. How many of you were a part of the First Baptist Church of Mesa when it was on the Brown Road campus? Can I see your hands, please? Look around. 80%, 70% of the people here? Here's why that's important. Underline that phrase, because you will lead them to Baptist Church of Mesa. What zip code did it exist in? 85205. And one of the things that happened that led to, it wasn't the bottom line issue, but it led to the loss of that church, was when it built an education building, ostensibly, to reach the children of the community, right? Good heart. I mean that in the nicest possible way. It was just a little bit more expensive than the church could afford. But the mission wasn't about building the building, or at least it should have been. The mission was about reaching the children. Do you realize that Joshua is speaking to you because you're still in a church in the 85205, just a few blocks from where you used to be, that God's giving you a second chance, and He is screaming loud and clear to you this morning. Those of you who gave your hearts and lives to the ministry of the First Baptist Church of Mesa, that are now part of Connect Church, but you carry some of that with you. Be bold and courageous, because you're going to inherit the land that I swore to you. Be strong and very courageous. Be careful to obey the law of my servant Moses, and do not turn from it to the right or the left. And then what's God setting us up for, according to His Word? That you might be, talk to me. Some of you don't sound convinced. Say it again. Talk to me. See, for those of you who are from the old church, and those of you who are part of this brand new church as we're coming together, you've got the promises of both. But you can't do it if you're trying to put all the new ministry in an old container of ministry. And I'm not talking about facility. I'm talking about your heart, about your mind, about your creative understanding. We have to embrace the history in order to impact the culture. So, Father, I pray that we would chew on this conversation for the next 3 or 4 days, maybe the next 3 or 4 weeks, maybe the next 3 or 4 months. What are we going to look like? Because, God, if we walk in those doors in a couple of weeks and do the same things we're doing now, we've wasted 18 months and $500,000. You want your lost children found. You want Christians to become followers of Jesus, to be trained and discipled. You want followers of Jesus to utilize their unique shape and spiritual gifting to serve others. God, if that's what you want, that's what we want. The Holy Spirit, go with us into our day. We love you and honor